Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Hall. I'm on the trumpet faculty at the Longy School of Music of Bard College, and I'm so happy that you've joined us for ITG's Listen and Learn. Today, I'm going to be diving in to a little bit of a tutorial called Building Smarter Practice Habits for Consistency and Growth. For me, I can't separate the mental and emotional side of practice and building mental resilience from the physical side. So I'm going to address both in this talk. So this is a little bit of my own story. This is how I looked in high school. I had pretty weird posture, and I will say that the way that I played the trumpet was quite manipulated. I would basically take the trumpet and screw in the mouthpiece and create this very open aperture, and I could play low and up to about a high C, and I had this funky posture. And then basically what would happen over time is I would have a bunch of teeth marks. My lips would get really tired. And the more that I played and the more that I pushed, the more tired I would get. Now, I also grew up in competition culture, and there were a few things that I sort of took on that fused with my music making for a long time. And these are some of the self-limiting beliefs that I had. Number one, second place is the first loser. It's a terrible thing to believe. Second, I'll never be able to play high notes. Now, I just explained I had a really inefficient embouchure, and also the way that I held my body in space, in alignment, was really off. So this is a major self-limiting belief. And I equated a lot of my sense of worth based on whether or not a performance was, quote, note perfect. I've worked for a long time as a life coach as well as a trumpet player to think about the mental growth mindset side that we could be bringing to our trumpet practice. So if you'll look at this, what we often do is we go to the practice room, we crack a note, and we're like, oh, I'm just going to do it again. Or we spiral into a web of self-deprecation. What I would love to introduce to us in ITG is a way of looking at our practice life with much more curiosity and growth. So here are some ways to do that. What kind of things are you already good at? Assess your strengths. Second, what kind of things are you wanting to get better at? And how might you address working on those things? What do you spend most of your time doing on the instrument? Do you do the same things over and over, or are you really working on building better systems? What messages do you tell yourself most often? Are you kind to yourself? And what are some of your self-limiting beliefs? Now, I don't know about you, but for a really long time, if I would have a not great performance, my mood would reflect how bad that performance was, and everyone would know about it. Now, this wasn't totally in line with who I am as a person, which is pretty joyful and pretty grounded. So I did a lot of work in this regard. Here are some ways I approach practice. If you want to get better at something, you can. Take a balanced approach. If you're playing a bunch of loud stuff in orchestra, make sure that you're playing at home is soft. I always say there's two big truths of trumpet playing, that the air has to be constant and that the lips have to be supple and freely vibrating. So get to that balanced place. Practice smarter, not harder. Quality over quantity. What are you wanting to accomplish? Turn up the volume on your champion. This is just basically the opposite of the imposter syndrome. And these are some ways that I do that. Journaling and exercising, remembering that music is a gift. And then there's a lot of books that I find helpful, but anything by Brene Brown really is helpful. Elizabeth Gilbert has a book called Big Magic, Embracing Creativity Beyond Fear. The Inner Game of Tennis is wonderful. And then there's a bunch of other books that I think really help develop mental resilience in practice. Finally, talk to yourself like you would talk to someone you love. Now, here's a little bit of my trumpet journey. When I decided to actually address the inefficiencies of my embouchure, first I had to look at the way that I was taught to breathe. So in trumpet playing, we often hear like push from your diaphragm. Well, here's an image of actually what this looks like. The diaphragm descends to increase thoracic capacity and inspiration. It's an involuntary dome-shaped muscle right underneath your lungs. When you breathe in, it flattens, and when you breathe out, it comes back up. when your lungs fill with air, then the rib cage expands. And for me, this was totally locked down when I first started really doing this work. So I often will check in with my posture, make sure that my back feels really open. You could even put your hands around your back and take a nice big HO inhale and make sure you can feel that expansion. This is just a diagram that comes from a respiratory mechanics textbook, an anatomy and physiology textbook. And it's a little bit of medical terminology, but I think it might be actually helpful for the way that we interface with the trumpet. So tidal volume is the little part right there in the middle, and that is the volume of air breathed in and out during unconscious breathing, like you're doing right now. In trumpet playing, we use inspiratory capacity, this full amount of the range of our air. Now, the most efficient players have figured out a way to be really efficient with their air to where they're using passive expiration most of the time. Now, in trumpet playing, we have lots of analogies, like when you play low, slow air. When you play high, it's faster air. And I think there's actually a way to equate respiratory mechanics with this analogy. So Jim Thompson has an activity that's called attack practice. I use that diagram that you just saw, and I apply it to attack practice in this way. So put the metronome on quarter note equals 60, play, off, on, breathe. So with each note that you try in the middle register and the low register and the upper register, think about what it would take in order to take a breath in and release the air, with the passive expiration speed being what is acoustically needed to land in the center of the tone. Okay? So what I want you all to try just for a second is going back to this. I want you to breathe all the way to 100% full of your inspiratory capacity, your fullest lung volume, and notice the speed of the air that comes out when you exhale. So it'll look like this. Okay? I'm not doing anything to force the air out. I'm letting the air out. Now, if we were to just explore a change in the inspiratory capacity and maybe breathe only to about where tidal volume is, let's say 50% of our inspiratory capacity, it might look like this. And the rate of flow of that passive expiration is a lot slower. So if you apply that to what's actually needed to play in the center, the most resonant pitch, often what we do is we default and take a huge big breath and try to come in on a low C, and we're either above the center of the pitch, really sharp, or our lips grab, which is why sometimes we have some issues as we go up in the upper register because we're actually not playing efficiently as we go up. So these are some things to consider as you're working on that. Here's some other things from Jim Thompson that I find really helpful. So everyone knows in trumpet playing that when you try to trill between a G and an A on top of the staff, it feels terrible. There's an acoustical break there based on the overtone series. So what we do is, Jim Thompson has noted in his buzzing book that there are breaks between the D sharp and E in the low register, but then also above. So the E and the F, the G sharp and the A, and the C sharp and the D on top. Now, what we have to do with trumpet playing is find a proper lip air balance, the ratio of lip tension to air speed that will allow us to produce the most resonant tone at a given pitch and dynamic. So my experiment for you would be to take in a really relaxed breath that starts you in the center of a tone, go up a scale, and when you cross E to F, G to A, C to D, see if by giving a little crescendo, if it makes it easier, if your lips have to actually grab less. So a little bit of planning and thinking about efficiency and what actually the trumpet needs and what you need to do can really yield, I say, efficiency over strength, really. We talk a lot about endurance with trumpet playing, but it's really about what's the easiest path. So experiment with this on your own. This is how I would create a technical execution plan. And this is really just so that I put in really good habits when I'm practicing. Start with the beginning of the phrase, Select where your inspiratory capacity needs to be to produce the most relaxed starting note. Where do you need to be in terms of lung volume, and where do you want to be at the end of each phrase? Decide on how much air you actually need to take in to navigate that. How many trumpet players have ever haphazardly been breathing and they take a big breath in, they play the phrase, and then at the end of the phrase, all the stale air they have to let out. So this is a way to prevent some of that. Be smart, plan, build good habits, and then mark the acoustical breaks. It can be really, really helpful in helping you be more efficient. So, final takeaway tips: plan, do, study, act. PDSA, also from the medical world, but really applicable to what we do on the trumpet. I want you to think about every time you pick up the trumpet, you are inputting habits. Which habits for you will be repeatable, will help you be more efficient, and help you have more consistency? And then finally, talk to someone, talk to yourself like you would talk to someone that you love. Stay curious. Think about your trumpet progress through the lens of curiosity and keep going. Thank you so much for listening to this. Reach out to me if you have any questions. This is how you can find me at Longy, ahall@longy.edu, and stay well.